Hi there, it's Mr. Clark. Welcome to lesson 2.5.1 on dynamics. So far we've been focusing pretty much on the pitch, how high or low, and the rhythmic, time aspects of music. Today we're going to look at another expressive dimension known as dynamics or volume. So we've talked about how the number of waves per second relates to the pitch of a note. The more waves per second you have, the higher the pitch is. The note A4 above middle C is exactly 440 waves or cycles per second. Nowadays, that standard has changed historically, but nowadays, generally, A is at 440 hertz or cycles per second. But today, we're not worrying about how many cycles per second there are. We're worrying about how the amplitude of the sound wave. So, if you think about a wave in the water, there are some parts that are higher than the average water level, and there are some parts that are lower than the average water level, and how much that disturbance is relates to how loud we perceive the sound to be. The larger the waves, the louder the sound, the smaller the waves, the softer the sound. Strictly speaking, this is not actually what sound waves do. Sound waves have to do with molecules in the air and how compressed they are. So, a high pressure area might look like this, where all of the molecules are like really close together, and then a trough of a water wave might look like this, where they're a few molecules, but they're all spread out. And then there's but this is a lot harder to draw and interpret. So this is usually how we think about sound waves, even though this is a more physically accurate representation. Anyway, so with pitch, we're pretty precise, how many cycles per second. With rhythm, we're pretty precise, relative durations of how long we want things to be. With volumes, we're not quite as precise, and this is for a couple of reasons. We can measure the actual volume of sound at this point. You may have heard of the decibel scale, which can measure how loud a sound is, usually in relation to, hey, you probably shouldn't be listening to these loud sounds because they will cause hearing damage. That's a real thing. You shouldn't. But the idea of a decibel wasn't invented until 1928. The first decibel meters to measure how loud sounds weren't invented until 1960, and dynamics in music existed for a long time before that. Also, human ears aren't as good at accurately distinguishing different volumes, so instead we came up with these relative terms. And because generally Italians were the first to use them in written music, we still use the Italian terms. So the big two are the P for piano and the F for forte. Piano means soft, forte means loud. In music, strictly speaking, they have slightly different meanings in actual spoken Italian, like forte is closer to strong, etc., etc. But for the purposes of music, piano means soft, forte means loud, and that's why the instrument we know as the piano, it's shortened from pianoforte because it could play both soft and loud. This was an improvement over previous keyboard type instruments that could only play at a single dynamic level. So, based on these two basic dynamics, we have variations. We can put a mezzo in front moderately, so you have moderately soft, mezzo piano, moderately loud, mezzo forte. You can have, and then you can go to the extremes. Pianissimo, very soft. Fortissimo, very loud. And you can keep going ad infinitum. You could have fortissimo, as many as you need. I mentioned there's a 17F fort something in Bob Margolis's piece Terpsichore, which is delightful. Um, then you might also want to change dynamics gradually as you go through a piece. So the way to do that would be, hey, if you want to get louder, you can write this symbol under where you want to get louder. So if you have like music, 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 maybe it starts at piano, and you would generally just see these symbols in the music, and then you could draw a crescendo all the way up to wherever it goes to. Maybe it goes to mezzo forte. Great. You could also say, no, I'm just going to write that word, and then it goes. I would recommend using the symbols. I know as a player, if I see the word crescendo, or the abbreviation CRESC, then I forget it by the time I actually need to do it. So hairpins are good because they extend the whole way underneath. The opposite of a crescendo is a diminuendo or decrescendo. That one's easier to remember. I don't know, I just like this one better. And that's gradually getting softer. Um, so as I showed over here with my rudimentary drawing, dynamics typically go under the music. The only exception to that would be vocal music, because you have lyrics, lyrics going underneath the music. So then your dynamics would go above the music, because you don't want both dynamics and lyrics below the music. That would just get too complicated. That's what I have for now. I will go ahead and see you next time.